Hi, today we created our CRUD program that is required to our midterm project. And also I will share to you our solution. So let's get started. Before we proceed to the design tab or to the components, um, I will explain the variables inside of this main class. So the forms variables, the access variable, the main datas, and our methods right here. So I'll explain first the variables. So we have this frame class variables. So we created frame login and we created this form login variable, and it's instantiate this frame login class, same as on the form create, form edit, and form delete. The form edit is set to the public because of some of its panel components is need to access this form. So next is this the access variable. It will define if the user have access or not. Next is our main data, which is the column header, which is to specify the column inside of this model student default table model. This is our in the class methods. So we created this is login to determine if the user access. If the user have access, the LBL welcome administrator will show on the upper right side of the screen. And then it will set the LBL login set text to log out here to determine if the user is logged in or not. Then next, we created this private image icon, a private method image icon to get the image of the specific path inside our project folder. It accepts three parameters, which is the path, the height, and the width. On the string path, we get our resources to this specific project and and navigates to a specific path. Let's say example this back blue PNG, and it will get this image and is stored to the icon variable. Then next, on the new img variable, we set the height and the width of the specific icon to our preferred size. And then finally, it will return the image icon as new image icon. The next is our color setter. The color setter, which accepts RGB color value, and it returns a specific color depending on the creator's preference. We created this custom table method, uh, and it becomes handy on displaying records on this customized JTable component. So this method, which adds the specific JPanel to the panel box layout, which is inside of this J-scroll pane with the panel inside in order to display the specific panel. Also, it will create some spacing um, in order to make a good looking table, and it will validate. So next, the refresh table data method. So first, in refresh table data method, it also refresh a panel first in order to add new records when the user updates, create, or delete a specified record. The purpose of this clear panel is to refresh our rows of data inside of the panel box layout. Then we look for the records inside the model student, and we created a row panel data class. The set is preferred size, set is maximum size, set its background, and set its alignment. Then next, the data inside of the row panel data will set the specific row index depending on the index of the specific record. Get the ID, ID string, and it is set is to the label ID, same as to the first name, last name, middle name, birthday, age, college, and course. And then finally, if we modify those records inside the row panel data, we can now add the panel data to the panel box layout, which is right here. Then next, the clear panel method. It will clear all the components inside of the panel box layout that we added before. Also, we revalidate and repaint it. Then finally, this final method is the clear selection, um, which if the user clicks some of its components, um, it will set the background color to white. So the clear selection method, which is get the all of the components inside the panel box layout, and it stores to the components array. Now we loop those components and then set each components to the set background color to white to display that this specific panel is not selected. So let's now proceed to design tab. Now, starting for the design tab, we created some buttons that is required to our project. The new record button, the update button, the delete button, the login button, and the exit button. So this is not a button component, but it is a panel. But we set it as a button, and also to make a flat style button to maximize our UI and make it more clean. So the new record, we have some three events, which is the click event, the entered event, and the exit event. In the click event, when user clicks this panel, then the entered when the mouse enters this component, and the exited when the mouse is exit on this component. So let's check on the entered event first. On the entered, we set the LBL new record icon, which is here as an invisible icon. We set this icon um, we set its icon to the record white, which is available in the icons folder. And then we set its height size and width size. Label foreground color to white, then set the background set color in order to determine that this panel is hovering a mouse. Then same as the update and the delete panel button. So let's start about the click events. The click event on the new record. First, it will check if the user have access. If the user does not have access, it will show a message dialog that will say that please log in to able to add a record. Then otherwise, if the user have access, it will show a form create a form and it will refresh the ID. And it will display a unique ID to able to create a new record. And also it will open a create form. Then next in the update button, and the update button same as the new button, it is checking if has access. If does not have access, it will show a message dialog that says please log in first. Otherwise, it will check again if the model student have a record. If not, it will show there's no available record, and if does have a record, it will show the open edit form and it will refresh the form edit refresh table data. And next onto the delete. First, same as to the two components, it will check if the user have access. Then if it has have access, it will check if the module student have a record. If it has a record, it will refresh the table data inside to the form delete form, and it will open the delete form. Then next is to the login button. When we click the login button, it will check if the user have access. If the user have not access, it will open the login form. Otherwise, the user is logged in, it will be a log out. It will set the access to false and it will check if the user log in. And set this panel menu, which you can see a big box right here. It will hide or show when the user clicks this button right there. The next is the exit button. It will exit our main form and terminates the program. Now, I will explaining the form login form or frame. So we created this undecorated form which has one panel to the left side and has some labels, text boxes, and a panel, a button. So let's check about the login button. Same as to the main, we have a mouse entered event and a mouse exited event. So if the user enters the cursor inside of this component, the set background we set on a specific color. Otherwise, it will set a different color. And next, and if the user clicks the login button, it will check that txt username and password if they are equals to the admin. If they are equals to the admin, it will show a message that the user is logged in successfully and it will clear the form which is it will clear these text boxes, the two text boxes inside the form. It will set the access to true and the main to check if the user is logged in to show this LBL welcome administrator and change the label inside of this panel to log out. And next, finally, it will close the login. Otherwise, if the username and txt password is not equal to admin, it will show a message dialog that will say invalid username and password, and it will set only the password to null. The method is same as to the main, which is getting the image from the project file, then a scholar setter and a clear form.
Good day, Sir Janus. I am Precious Angel Manlangit,
I am Joanna May B.S. Copete.
and we will be explaining the part where we will be adding a new record from the program that we created. So this is the code for the form named frame create. Here are the variables, and then a one-dimensional array containing the four colleges, then a two-dimensional array that contains the program for each colleges respectively. Public static is the access modifier for the JLabel LBL ID so that it has only one existing copy for the whole project. Now let's proceed to the creation of the frame. We first set its size, and then the default close operation is set to dispose on close, wherein whenever we close the window for creating record, the main frame will still be open and it won't be terminated. Then, here are some of the properties, and then the content pane, and another JPanel named panel create. This is where the label create record and the rest of the objects will be added to. So here we can see the text fields for the first name, middle, and last name. Then a JDate chooser, which is named as DC birthday. This will show a calendar in the program wherein the user can input their date of birth. The next are the combo boxes. So for CBO College, we added an item listener wherein it will run this block of code whenever the state of the combo box is changed. So if we change the state of the combo box, the first that we the first is that it will create an integer variable named bro, and it will store the selected index of CBO college. And then a for loop that has a condition stating that an integer named column is 0, and if the column is less than the length of the selected program, it will increment the column. And then the combo box for the course will refresh because we added a new item to it. That was from the array named program, which the index of each row will be dependent on the selected of index of the CBO college. Then, here is the code for the labels that will appear as text in the program that will guide the user on what credential should they enter. Now, for the save button, it is actually a panel, but we added an action listener to it. So whenever the mouse is clicked, this block of code will run. Now these are the methods that we created also, and it will be explained later by Joanna. Let us proceed to the panel back. Just like the save button, it will also act as a button that whenever the mouse clicks it, it closes the form. Now, this is where the label for the ID is initialized and its properties, and then we will proceed to the methods that we also created. The first one is the image icon, wherein it will get the image from the computer by getting its path, and it will show up in the program. The next method is for refreshing the ID, named refresh ID. It also contains another method on how we generate the ID, named getID method. So for this, we first created a variable named row, which is 0. Then it will check the table if the row is not empty. If it's not empty, the row variable will store the number of rows in the table. The variable ID and gen ID are used for checking if the table already contains the ID number. So if the row is not equal to 0, then it will perform the while loop that states that while the ID is greater than 0, this will happen. A for loop that will retrieve every ID number from the table using the getValueAt method, and it will be stored to the variable table ID. And then if the ID variable is equal to table ID variable, it will break the loop, and the contain boolean that was first set as false will become true, meaning there is already an existing ID number. But if the ID number does not contain in the table yet, meaning the boolean contained is still false, then the value of the variable ID will be put on the variable genID, which will be returned to the method, or else the variable will increment, and then the boolean contained will be set to false. We made this method to ensure that every generated ID number will be unique and in order.
For the next method that we created is this add row. The use of this method is to retrieve all users' input, which was explained by Precious earlier. We create array whose type is object to hold any type of data that can be transferred into the components that Precious also mentioned. So let's proceed to the data zero. In this column, if we look at the table, it is the automated student ID that the program automatically provides. To get that one, we use this method, getID, which is explained by Precious earlier, which is this code, this method getID. And for the data one, in this part, we use the method getText from JText field class to get the first name of the student. Similar to the process of getting the first name, we also use the same method to get the middle name and the last name. For the column 5, data 4, which is date of birth, to get the student birthday, we use a JDateChooser class. And to format it in the format we desire, we use simple date format, which is concrete class for formatting and parsing dates in local sensitive manner. Simple date format allows you to start by choosing any user-defined patterns for date time formatting. And after that, we create temporary storage, which is string called birth date of birth rather, to format the date that student input in JDateChooser into string. And then we call the date of birth and put it in the data 4 to get the date of birth of the student. And for the column 6, data 5, also we use the simple date format. But this time, we use it to get only the year that which we can use later to get the age of the student. And we start it in the data type int birth date. The reason why we stored it in integer type for us to be able to subtract the birth date and the current year. To get the current year, we use this method. After that, we subtract the current year and birth date and we stored it into the string with a variable name of age. And for the column 7, data 6, to get the student college, we use this method, CBO college that gets selected item. Similar to the process of getting the college, we use also this method but we just change only the variable. Instead of college, we put course. And last, to add all of this into the table, we call the main where you can find the model student and use the method add row. And we use this method also to refresh the table data. For the next method that we created is the create form, where when admin is done using the frame create form, everything in the JText field class and JDate chooser will be cleared, while the college and course will return to the default selected item. This is the method to clear instances of JText class and the instance of date chooser, and this too is to set the CBO college and CBO course to default selected item. Also, we have method here called isRegisterValid. First, we create boolean status variable that is equals to false. Also, we have method here called isRegisterValid. First, we create boolean status variable that is equals to false. The use of isRegisterValid is where we check the instances of JText field class, which are the name, last name, and middle name if it is empty. And also to check the instance of the JDate chooser class, which is DC birthday if it is blank or null. Then, if one of the instances of JText field is blank or DC birthday rather variable is null, then we will show a message to user using the method show message dialog from JOptionPane class that the user need to fill up all the credentials. But if all of the instances of JText field is not blank and also the instance of JDate chooser is not null, the boolean status will return true. After the user inputs all the credentials and click the save button, which is this JPanel class that serves as a button. If user clicks this button, it will save the inputs of the user. We use mouse click event. We use this mouse click event and then it will check the method is register valid. If it is true, we will terminate this block of codes. But if the register valid record is false, we will not add the record.
So, for a sample run, we will show you a demonstration on how we can create a new record. Starting from clicking the new record button, filling the name, date of birth, then choosing your college and program. Now, if any of the credentials were left empty, there, it will show a message dialog showing what credentials was missing, and then you click OK. It will be returning to the same window of creating the record. So that's all for the frame create.
Again, I am Joanna Maybe Escopete.
And I am Precious Angel Manlangit.
We are from the group Bruteforce.
day, Professor Johnston. We are about to present our explanation of the update tab and how it works. First off, let us introduce ourselves. My name is JC Tabon.
And I am John Daniel Del Monte from Bruteforce Group of 1 CSA.
Let us proceed to the update tab. Now, as you can see in the table, we have our label first name, middle name, last name, up to the post. Now, if you press the edit button, it will select the row index, and the selected row index is now highlighted. We can also see that the data of the selected student will appear in the text field, the chooser, and the combo boxes, which is located on the left side of the screen.
As you can see, if you rewrite the first name into, for example, Mark, then press save, the mark will appear in the table under the first name. The same goes for the other components. Note that you cannot select two or more indices in the table. The program also has a functionality to know if the text fields are blank or plain white space. We cannot save a record with a blank text field. If there are blank text field, for example, for user friendliness, the program will show a message for the user to fill up the specific text field. Now let's proceed to the code.
First up, we created the J button, then we set its variable to BTNN. We add an action listener which is called action perform. We set the code frame edit that clear selection under action perform. The purpose of that code is to clear the selected index, then we invoke get record method. Through this get record method, inside the main class, we call the instance of frame edit which is called form edit. We set the text of txt first name using setText method to the value of LDL first name using getText method. We did the same to the txt last name and txt middle name. For the birthday, we save the value of label birthday to variable dt using getText method. We set the variable dt to string data type. We use the try catch method. Inside try, we set the simple date format month, day, year, then we parse it to the variable dt. We set the birthday to the result of this line of code. As you can see, if this line of code encounter an error or a problem, then it will skip into the catch code. Now, for the combo boxes, we set the selected item of this CBO college using setSelectedItem method to the LBL college using getText method. We also did the same for CBO course.
We created an instance of JPanel class. We name it btnsave that will serve as a button. If we click this button, it will save the inputs of the user. We use mouse click event, and inside of the method, we are checking if the register valid method is true. If it is true, we will invoke the update record method and the clear form method. If the register valid method return false, we will not update the record. Let's see what this register valid method do. We have a method here called register valid that simply returns a boolean type of data. This is where we check the instances of JText field class, which are the txt first name, txt middle name, txt last name if it is blank. Also checks the instance of JDateChooser class, which is DC birthday if it is null, and check if the user has a selected row that he wants to update. If one of the instances of JText field is blank or the DC birthday variable is null, then we just notify or show a message to users using showMessageDialog method from JOptionPaint class. that the user need to fill up all of the information and we will return false. If all of the instances of JText field class are not blank and instance of JDate user is not null, the method will return true. After executing the register valid method, we will proceed to the update record method. We have here update record method. From the name itself, this method will update the record of the user. You can see that we are able to access the model student object from the main class using the class itself and that notation. And that is because we set this object variable to static and public as access modifier. If this expression returns true, we will set the value of a specific row and column of the model student from main class by invoking the setValueAt method that accepts three parameters, which are the value that we wanted to set, the row, and the column. We get the value of instances of JText field class using getText method. txt first name at first column, txt last name at second column, and txt middle name at third column. We created an instance of simple date format to format the date of DC birthday, which is the instance of JDateChooser class, and we use the getDate method to get the value of the instance of JDateChooser and set the date to the column 4 of model student. We created again an instance of simple data format. We called it year. That will parse only the year of DC birthday object. We get the current date by creating an object of date class. Using the format of year, we got the current year. And now we can compute the age of the user through the current year minus the birth year of the user and set it to column 5 of the model student. After that, we see the value of columns 6 and 7 for college and course using the setValueAt method from the object of default table model from main class that we called model student. After executing this code block, we will set the current row to -1 and show a message to user that the system successfully updated the record, and we will invoke the refresh table data method. Let's see what this refresh table data method do. Inside the refresh table data method, we invoke the clear panel to refresh or remove the components inside the object of jPanel that we name as PNL box layout. Inside the for loop, we are iterating to every row of the instance of default table model named as model student. For every row of model student, we are creating an instance of panel edit data class name as row panel data and set its instance variables or what we call fields of the class by getting the corresponding data. We are not doing one of the concepts of object-oriented programming in Java that we call encapsulation for wrapping the data. We just simply convert the access modifier of instance variables of the panel edit data from private to public. You can see that these are an instance variables, not static variables, and that is because we are creating an instance of panel edit data class. Every row of model student has one instance of panel edit data class. All of the fields in panel edit data class is instances or objects of JLabel class except for the row index. We get the specific, we set the value for the LBL ID and LBL first name, LBL last name, LBL middle name, LBL birthday, LBL age, LBL college, and LBL course by invoking the setText method and get the value using specific row and column in model student. We get the specific value in our records by calling the model student object from main class and invoking the getValueAt method that accepts two parameters. The first parameter is the iteration variable or the row. And the second one is the column. The setText method from JLabel class only accepts string data type as parameter. That is why after that is why after we get a specific value inside the model student, we convert it into string type of data using toString method. After setting all of the fields, we use addPanel methods that accept jPanel as parameter, and we put the instance of panel edit data, which is row panel data, as arguments to visualize or for the user able to see the data.
Hi again. I'll be explaining the delete record form that I've been created. So let's start about the variables. So we set our variable, some components variable, and our my variable. So I've been created a list of panel delete data class. Its name is data as array list of panel data. I've created a list to be able to modify them if I want to. Then a private JTable TBL student info to be able to filter the data inside and to display a filter data. Then next, the methods inside of this form. So the same method on the main class, which is getting the image to the icons folder on the project file. Then clears form, it will clear the txt search because the search bar only is the input on this form. Then next, the custom table method. I've explained this already to the main, which is adding the panel to the panel box layout. Another one is this filter record, which filters on specified search bar. It will get the record on the main model student, and it will filter a specific data when the user search for it. And then the filter data is stored to this TBL student info. Then the filtered data will pass to this refresh filter data to display the filtered data and to show on this customized JTable. Here is the refresh filter data. It gets the table as the parameter, and it clear the data which is we created as a list inside of this. Then also clears the panel inside of this JPane scroll bar, which is I've been put as the panel box layout. Then we iterate and modify the data and put the data inside of this row panel data. We created the row panel data, set its preferred size, maximum size, set background color, and alignment. Set its row index and get the value and convert to and set is to the LBL ID, LBL first name, last name, middle name, birthday, age, college, and course. And then also it adds the panel to the panel box layout method, which is right here. And then it will add the row panel data also to the data list in order to modify them soon. Then same as to the refresh filter data, but not as the parameter of the table. It will set as the original data inside of this model student. Same method from the main class. So I'll explain also the is there selected item. This method will checks if there's a panel data selected inside. So let's run the code. uh, if we select this table, it will check if um, the user selects some of the records inside of this table. If the user does not select a record, it will display there's no selected record to delete, and otherwise, if the user selects, it will show confirmation if the user wants to delete this specified record or not. So we created a selected count if the user has selected more than a zero. Iterate the data list and get each data and store it to the new panel delete data variable. Then it checks the panel data is selected, which is here, panel delete data, created a method inside if is selected. If selected, if it is true, it will return true, else it will return false. Now, we can check if this panel is selected. If panel is selected, we can iterate the selected count to 1. We can add the value of selected panels to the selected count. If there's a selected, it will break this loop and it will read this line of code. If the selected count is greater than 0, means that if the user selected more than one of the, or if the user selected any record, it will return true, and else it will return false. So here we have delete selected items. So we have a list of here of integer of selected items to determine of which the data user select. And again, we iterate the list of data on the data list on this data. Then we'll get each panel data and store to the item variable. So determines if the item is selected, we will get the LBL ID text and it will converted to the integer and will adding to the list of selected items. If we finish iterating and we get all of the selected items, we will iterate the selected items. We will read all of these selected items and delete each selected items. So here to delete a record. So determine it will accept one parameter which is the num as integer, and then we have created the row equals to 0. This will check. This will get the index of the ID on the model student. So it will iterate all the records inside of the model student, and then each model's record inside of the model student, we get the ID and store it to the ID number. And then if the ID number is equals to the parameter num, let's say it equals to 2, um, it will return the index of that specific record, and it will break this loop. And The returned value of row will be deleted on the model student, and the loop goes on until we deleted all the selected items inside of the J table. Also, we have this delete rec, which is reading all the records and deleting each record one by one until the record is empty. So we have also this clear data, which is clears the data inside of the panel box layout, and also clear selection, which is it will clear the selection inside of the customized J table. So let's check that out. And on the delete tab, we can see this record is selected, and we can unselect this like this. We can also search, let's say May 7, and delete all, and we can delete selected. And that's all about the frame delete class. I hope you enjoy on our presentation, and thank you for watching. Stay safe and God bless always. My name is Lance Rafael Pancho, and I'm the leader of the Bruteforce.